All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samu?
Well, this was supposed to be the birthday episode, but we had to go a day late. But I do have my birthday shirt on, one of them. I don't know how to act my age because I've never been this old before. So I got dad
I
joke
love it.
shirts and I love it. Yes. There's another one.
Great.
I keep my jokes, my dad jokes in a database. And the work shirt today was getting older is just your body parts taking turns saying, you thought that was bad. Check this out.
Well, yeah, what happened was
Which actually is relevant to what we're going to talk about today.
yes, because what we're going to talk about today uh lends right into the kind of saying of the show, which we stole from the great Dr. Thomas Sowell, and we haven't said in a while. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. And what happened yesterday was I'm on new meds, and I thought the side effects, one of which is sleepiness, was getting better. And my pain levels spiked up real bad. So I took something for it. One of the side effects of those is also sleepiness. So
Yeah, when they say don't take with certain meds, this certain med, that's kind of what they mean. Also, when it says
I,
don't drink alcohol, that's because it makes you sleepier too.
I think I was awake for about 2.5 hours yesterday. I was really confused when I got up this morning, or and my wife said happy anniversary, and I looked at her and said, "What?" Because I thought it was the
That's
14th.
right. Y'all did get married on
Yes. The
Valentine's.
15th is our anniversary. And I was
Yeah.
looking at her going, it's the 14th. Wait, no, it's not. Yesterday was the 14th, and I completely missed it.
Well, tell Carrie
So,
happy anniversary from me.
all right. And happy belated birthday to you.
All right. The big fofo. But we're talking about actually sports injury today. We've done an episode about it, but you just asked me about it in real time and I kind of rambled about it. So this time I've got a full
Yeah.
slides presentation basically for it. So it'll be more concise, but more informative than the original Achilles conversation. So if you saw
Because,
that headline before in our
mhm.
videos, this one's going to be better, I think, because we had yet again another Achilles injury in the Super Bowl. And these things are popping up like crazy.
And it was sad and embarrassing and pathetic. Uh, because for anyone who missed it,
I've
there
got the video of it.
okay, you've got the video. It was yikes. And you said it at the time, the way he went down and the way he looked like he was in so much pain and he couldn't put any weight on it and they had to bring out the cart. You said it at the time, and sure enough,
Yeah.
there it was.
Yeah, if you're ever
Um,
watching a football game with me and someone gets injured, usually I can pop out exactly what it was just based on how they went down or what ensued on the play, whether it was contact, non-contact. And the only ones that are harder are when someone gets rolled up on inside the
mhm,
interior line
mhm.
because did they roll sideways? Did they roll from the back? You have to see the replay to get that. But if they go down in an open field, I can almost diagnose it without even looking at the
You
person.
know, this I hadn't thought of this when we were getting ready to talk about this, but this makes me want to dig around and see if I can find out what McCaffrey's off-season training program is like,
It's fun to watch.
because there was a play where he got rolled up pretty bad. He got bent over pretty bad, and you could see on his face it didn't feel good. But
Well,
then
he
after
he
the
was pretty banged up by the end of that game.
but immediately after that play in particular, he popped back up. He went back into the huddle and he made like a 7-8 yard run on the next play.
There's a
So,
chemical in your brain. It's called norepinephrine and epinephrine. It's the precursor to
mhm.
adrenaline. He seems like the type that would get pretty hyped up.
But there was a buzzword going around for a while when Tom Brady was trying to sell his program of pliability. And it's I hate buzzwords, but it's a good word when you're talking about athletes, and I think it works better than flexibility, because I think when people think flexible, they think, can you reach down and touch your toes? And that's not necessarily what we're talking about when we're talking about the ability to move, to bend, to go through ranges of motions, to sometimes get caught in awkward positions and not have it, and have it be discomfort, not injury.
Hmm. Well, that's kind of the punchline as we go forward here. So put a pin in that. Let's start with the Super Bowl. I think this injury was the difference in the game. You have arguably one of the top two defenders on the field on that side going down. Was it before halftime, right? But let me
I
look
want
at
to say
the
it was right
time step
before.
on the video. Oh, you don't see the NFL clock on that. Maybe when I show it, you will. But uh, I think it was right before, somewhere in the middle of the game. You've got one of the top defenders on the field
Hmm.
going down, the guy who would have been one-on-one with Travis Kelce in any passing situation and was doing a great job in the first half because Kelce, what,
Hmm.
caught one
Hmm.
pass for 1 yard or something in the first half, somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
yeah.
And
And I
then he
think he
went
only
off in the
had two or
second
three
half.
targets. Yeah.
He went off in the second half, and I think that was the adjustments they had to make for Greenlaw going out. So Greenlaw's a stud on the field, and he's all over the place, and he can cover a receiver, unlike a lot of linebackers. So he's a very versatile. Some would argue Warner's the better linebacker, but I think they're complementary to each
Hmm.
other. And so I think that was the difference in the game because it really was almost to the last minute of overtime game,
Yeah. Yeah.
realistically. Uh, but other than that, my beef is this is the third game in a row that the head coach of the opposition to the Chiefs changed the game plan that had been working for them all year and played right into the Chiefs' strength.
Hmm.
Baltimore didn't run the ball. Buffalo tried to push the ball down the field the whole time. The strength of the Chiefs' defense is their corners
Well,
and their
and
four-man rush.
you saw that kind of flipped is in the Baltimore game. I there was some ridiculous numbers like they only ran it in single digits, I think, in the first half, and then
Eight runs.
they tried to run it more in the second half, but it wasn't working. It
Mhm.
was too little, too late, and then in
And Lamar refused to run when he had an open field in front of him.
yeah, and there were lots of times where in earlier games he would have taken off, he would have gotten that first down, kept the drive alive. And in the Super Bowl, they went out. The San Francisco went out well balanced. Using that run to set up the pass the way they have all season. And then in the second half, they seemed to forget about it.
Yeah, they kept, and I think this is the fan pressure because Purdy, the game manager, well, they threw the ball down the field a lot. So he's
Mm-hmm.
this year. So he's not, it's not justified to call him the game manager.
Mm-hmm.
But you also got to think of the defense you're facing. And Snead and McDuffie are two of the few corners in the league that can sit on a wide receiver one-on-one for an 8 second play.
I
That's
was wondering in thinking about it after the fact. I was wondering, do we have to reevaluate Shanahan? Because I said a couple weeks ago, you
no,
know,
and I'll give you why. I'll give you why in a
given
second.
the
But
Shanahan tree, how we may have to put Shanahan above Belichick, but Kyle Shanahan seems to not be able to win the big game, and I'm wondering: is this a Vicini situation? Is this a battle of wits, and he's overthinking it when it comes to these big
and
games?
that's why I this is why I like to take a different angle because people go, oh, armchair quarterback, or, easy for you to say it's not your job on the line and blah, blah. This is where I think there needs to be a guy on every coaching staff that's just a regular dude and you rotate them in from the fan base that just kind of sits next to the head coach and just every once in a while gives them an elbow in the side and say, hey, you're overthinking. I can't do your job, but I can see that you're overthinking this because you're out of character right now. It's like that, when someone's in you and your friend are in the club or bar and they start talking to that girl that's completely not their type, but it's been a while for them, so they kind of drop their standards for a little bit. You as the buddy have to, like, go, no, you're gonna regret this later. Let's
It's something I had forgotten in listening to some of the post game analysis and the criticisms of Shanahan is so you've got the three Super Bowls where he had leads and lost. I forgot he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons.
mm,
And so for all the criticism Dan Quinn rightfully gets because he was the head coach and the defense kind of fell apart in the second half. Where was Dan Quinn, the head coach, in the headset to Shanahan saying, yo, bro, what are you doing? Let's stop being cute and let's just control the ball. We
Hmm.
have a huge lead. Let's play possession here,
Well,
and
this
it
this
didn't
is my
happen.
beef with Slowick too, our offensive coordinator. But with him, he's so young. I think he might grow out of this. But he would be running a great game plan, and then we'd get in the plus side of the field, triple reverse flea flicker. What? Loss
Hmm.
of 12.
Hmm.
And that's loss of 12 when you completed the pass. Come on. What did you do there? Now we're 12 yards behind the sticks. Oh my gosh, we got a punt. And he did that many, many times throughout the season. Good, well balanced drive down the field. We're in plus territory, field goal range. Let's do something fancy. Oh, interception or fumble or loss of 10 or get behind the
Hmm.
sticks. And it just, I hopefully he grows out of that. That's what these guys do on a meta level. Shanahan didn't really have the comfort zone to do it in this game, but in the Falcons game, he probably wanted to sit on the lead and try to throw out a surprise every once in a
Hmm.
while. And that's when like you said, the head coach needs to come in and be like, go back to what you were doing in the first half. I give you free reign, but you call the X's and O's, but you do this style of play. Don't sit on the lead because they're going to come back. And in this one, the problem is the play caller was the head coach. There's no one to do that for him.
So in hindsight, because at the time we thought it was a pretty good game because it was close, it was back and forth, and ultimately it went down almost to the very end of a full quarter of overtime. But in listening to some post game analysis, I've heard quite a few X's and O's people say this was not a good game. Was it good defense or was it sloppy play?
Uh, I think in this, well, there was a lot of there were a lot of fumbles. There was a lot of sloppy play. Uh, that everybody's like, oh, it's scripted and everything. You can't script that ball hitting the back of the defender's ankle on that
Yes.
punt.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
you could talk about script all day long. You can't script that play to end up that way.
Hmm.
But
You know what, that play is a great example of the saying luck is when preparation meets opportunity,
mhm.
because that was bad luck because, like you say, the defender's just trying to make a block. He can't see the ball and it just barely grazes his ankle. But then the receiver, don't try and pick up the freaking ball, just dive on it. If he had just dove on it, it's done. That's
Mhm. It's
no
over. We
big
got the
deal.
ball. We'll make up for it. We'll
Okay.
we'll drive
Yeah.
down the field. Yeah, everybody settle
But
down. We almost had a bad play there, but
when it comes to the sloppy play versus the good game, I will say, kudos to freaking Andy Reid and him building on his legacy. That I don't remember the exact numbers, but in the first half, the Chiefs got more penalties than they averaged per game over the season. And then in the second half, they didn't get another penalty until the overtime quarter.
mhm.
So that was another big that in the first half between Kelsey and Mahomes, and there were some antics there and all the penalties. The Chiefs looked like a team that was about to lose control. They
Mhm.
they looked like they were out of control of themselves. And whatever happened during halftime, however much of it was Reed, however much of it was the other coaches or the player leaders, they came out a different team.
Yeah, I
So
thought it was a
kudos
little
to them.
over the top in the first half, and all the conspiracies out there of realistically, that was not in character for Kelsey to go after Andy Reid like that, and
Hmm.
for something
Hmm.
very minor.
Hmm.
He was running the game plan. He was still in the first whatever 20 plays you have scripted that Andy Reid does. Kelsey was going to come out of there. He should have known he was coming out for that
I,
play.
I
That
I think that probably typifies what was going on with the whole team of all of the off the field hype, all of the potential to repeat, which hadn't been done since the Patriots 20 years ago. You know, all of those things. I think they came out a little too hot. And then whatever happened during halftime was settled down. And that may have been one of the times where the annoyingly extra long Super Bowl halftime worked for them, because
mm,
sometimes you'll go in and you'll get cold because you've got like an extra 10 minutes or so of halftime. And that may have worked for the Chiefs of having that extra time to just chill out, guys.
mhm. All right. Well, let's get to
But
the
on to the
injury.
specific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's get to the injury. I still think is a difference in the game because this is we talked about sloppy in the first half. This is
Hmm.
a guy who was having an amazing first half. He was disrupting every run. He was covering Kelsey like crazy. He was a man amongst boys in that
Hmm.
first half. Uh, if he had played the whole game and San Francisco won, San Francisco didn't have a clear-cut MVP if they won that game. You could
Yeah.
have argued that this linebacker would have been the MVP because he was on his way to 10, 12 tackles. He had a couple pass deflections. He was in on some of those fumbles. I don't know if he caused them or if he
Hmm.
just disrupted the play, but he was in on a couple of those. So I think he plays the second half. It's a two-score game for San Francisco
Hmm.
because once you get behind like that, even if the other team's just slowly grinding the lead, you get desperate on
Well, it
offense, and
wasn't
then that hot-headedness might have come back.
wasn't the halftime score, wasn't it like 13-3? Um,
10, 10
Sa-
to 10-3.
okay.
Yeah, it was
I,
it
I
was
knew it
real
was
close.
really
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a field goal and a touchdown for San Francisco, and then a field goal for Kansas City. So, uh, yeah, I really think it's a different game had he stayed on the field. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's a counterfactual. You can't really prove it.
Hmm.
But here's the injury. I'm not going to share what sound because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
completely
Just
not
keep it
needed.
muted
Yeah.
because
Okay,
stupid
so
copyright crap.
yeah, number 57, if you can see my cursor there,
Hold on. Come on.
is it not coming up?
Started screen sharing.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay.
All right. So if you can see my cursor,
Yep.
that's 57 is Greenlaw. Okay. So what happens here is he's running out on the field after a play, but he realizes he ran out too soon. The play's still not whistled dead. So he jumps back and at that point it's whistled dead. So he starts running again. So his weight's going backwards and then he starts running forward again. So let's start it here. See, jumps back, couple hops, pop right there, his left leg. In the slow mo, if you can find I've seen it on Instagram, but I couldn't find it on YouTube. But look, he goes down holding the back of his leg, and let's watch it one more time. Let me see if I can slow mo it. Can you slow down the speed on YouTube?
I don't know.
Okay, because I know you can speed it up. Playback speed. Oh yeah, you can. Let's watch that 0.25. Okay, so he's priming his calves right there in that Achilles.
Yep. And it's
Who
going to
know
be the left leg, right?
right there. Pop. Do you see that calf pop roll up?
That wiggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that calf
Yeah.
rolled up and
Yeah.
see how his ankle has no stability there. Yeah,
Yeah.
he all of a sudden had really good dorsiflexion because there was nothing holding it back and he went down.
Hmm.
So that is the injury.
So he's priming, and then that left leg way back, he's putting a ton of pressure on that leg to drive forward.
One more time, just so everybody can, yeah, thank you for circling it for me. Boom, right there. Oh, and then he's already got that leg going forward. He can't stop. He's trying to stop himself and he goes
Hmm.
down. Okay, so that's the injury. Uh, I'll give it a thumbs up. There we go. Okay. So this is the Achilles tendon, which is what he ruptured. So there's a healthy one up on the top. And I've got other views of this because it looks really skinny here. But this is a tendonitis. For those that don't know the difference between a tendonitis and a tendinosis, the tendonitis is inflammation. So you can see the bulb there. And then the tendinosis is tiny tears within it. So he may have already had something along this line
Hmm.
going on. Uh, they're completely opposite treatments. Tendonitis, you put cold, anti-inflammatories, and you try to get the inflammation down. The tiny tears, you actually work the muscle and try to get blood flow to the area. So you're trying to reduce blood flow for a tendonitis. You're trying to improve blood flow for a tendinosis. So it's really important to they have the same symptoms. So it's really important to get the proper diagnosis there. And here's the tendon rupture. So
Pop.
yeah, it's something that you very rarely partially tear, except for these little micro tears.
Well,
It's usually a one and done.
and I have heard people say who have been around an Achilles tear that it sounds like a gunshot.
Oh yeah, I wish
And
we had one of those bubble microphones near him
hmm
when it happened, because
yeah,
you would have, it would have been. Well, I'm
yeah,
let's did Greenlaw turn around, who was running right next to him? Let's see what Greenlaw does here when it happens. Okay, so here, boom, he turns his head away, and no, he didn't. None of the guys registered it, so I guess it wasn't loud enough. But of course, it's in a
yeah,
freaking football field where
yeah.
everybody's cheering for the last play. Okay, so there's a complete rupture, and just for perspective, this is what it looks like from the back. So it's not this skinny little thing.
Yeah, and this is where the gunshot comes from, because that
Yeah.
is a big honking piece of connective tissue that is under a lot of tension.
And this is actually a cutaway because there's two basically heads to the same muscle. Everybody says calf. Well, there's the soleus, which is what they left whole here, which is underneath, and then there's the gastrocnemius, which is what they cut away here. It goes over the top. That's the bubble in your calf. If you've got nice separated calves, that's the bubble, and then the underneath is the other one. Now, the difference between the two, they all have one connection point, which is the Achilles tendon. The difference between the two is the soleus connects to the tibia on the lower leg, which is your shin bone, and the gastroc actually connects from the Achilles all the way up past the knee. So the gastroc is a two, so the calf itself is a two joint muscle, but only part of the calf is a two joint muscle. So part of it, half of it goes over the knee and over the heel, and the other half goes over the heel and connects to the leg bone. So it's one of those that they say it's two separate muscles, but it's really not, because it's got one attachment point on the distal end. Uh, Here's another view where it's all together. So you've got your whole gastroc here. Underneath it, you can kind of see the soleus,
Hmm.
but they all connect into that Achilles tendon. So it, and actually technically that wraps around the bottom as well, and then connects into the plantar fascia. So if you've ever had plantar fasciitis, you know it's really hard to dorsiflex, which is pull your toe up. And actually that's why it feels worse in the morning, because when you're sleeping, gravity pulls your foot down, and so you're plantar flexed, ballerina, your toes are pointed all night long, and then you stand up first thing in the morning, that tissue's been sitting short all night long, and then you stretch it out all of a sudden and it fires up like crazy. So that's why plantar fasciitis is worse in the morning, and an Achilles tendonitis would be the same, which kind of leads us to our diagnosis here. I cannot diagnose nor treat injury. That's my disclaimer. If you are feeling pain in your heel or the bottom of your foot, please go see a doctor or a therapist. Uh, there's our medical disclaimer.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, once again, we've said it before, but it's been a while. Um, the no pain, no gain. The pain is discomfort leave or is weakness leaving the body. No, pain means something's wrong. We want you to be appropriately uncomfortable. If you are feeling pain, then that is your body saying something is wrong, something is out of whack, and that is the point where you need to go see someone.
Okay, so now we all see how it connects. Now, why is this important? Well, we need the attachment points to the muscle, from the muscle to the bone, to actually know how to prevent tendon injuries. The problem with tendons are that they're not very pliable. In fact, they're relatively rigid, which is a good thing because it helps with movement. The pliable part is the muscle itself. So we've got some scholarly articles here. I'm breaking out the videos and the visuals and the scholarly articles. Prediction and injury risk based on movement patterns and flexibility in 6-month prospective study among physically active adults. So this is great. It's a prospective study. So they got a bunch of people together who were extremely active and followed them over time, and then took the the prevalence of the injury and kind of put the pattern together. And here's what they came up with. If we just slide down to the results, the biggest predictor of injury was quality of movement pattern, and the second one was flexibility of the tissue. And it's way under the quality of movement pattern, but it's almost 50%. 50% of predictor. So quality of movement and flexibility of the area were important. with Achilles tendon tears. So which one is this? Mayo Clinic? Okay, I think I wanted this one first. Okay, so what are the risk factors for tendonitis and rupture of the Achilles tendon? Let me move that here so I go in the right order. Uh, People who runners, that's obvious because you're putting a lot of pressure on that. Age, that's pretty obvious. Greenlaw is, how old is he? Can you look that up while I'm doing this? Because I know he's been around a little bit, but I don't think he might be around 30, which is kind of old for a linebacker, but not old compared to us.
Yep, yep, yep. Keep
Flat
going.
arches, which is important because the arch of your foot is a shock absorber, and any spring you get is going to take pressure off the rigid tissue. So that I brought this up. The tendon isn't very springy itself, so it requires the structures around it to have that shock absorption.
26 years old.
Oh, so he's younger. Okay, so he's right in the middle of your expected career line for a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Gender, men are more likely to develop Achilles tendonitis than women. Now, I think this one should have a caveat because men are also more likely to take part in the activities
Yeah.
that can create it. So I think that one should have an asterisk next to it. Medicine. Oh, this is a great one because remember when I was complaining about my antibiotics?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they are right there because they oxidize the connective tissue. That's why I'm so careful in my workouts right now because we're still in that window of where they could be effective. Uh, so different. So if you're on any of these medicines, be careful if you want to go for a run or something. Pay attention to your body and as far as there's any pain
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. Now the problem with Achilles ruptures is they typically don't have a warning. It's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, boom. But when I read my side effects, I started being careful and I can feel the tendonitis coming along. So we talked about runners. This is an activity that puts a lot of stress. It's depending on how fast you run, it's anywhere from 2 to 8 times your body weight hitting the ground at any given time on one
And,
leg.
and this is something that I rant about a lot, in part because one of the very basic generic uh fitness advice that you get often from authoritative places, like when, the USDA or whatever puts out guidelines, is just go for a jog, just go for a light jog.
Well, put a
I,
pin in
I
that for a second because I'm going to skip tight calf
yeah.
muscles and I'm going to go to the next one. Weight, because most of the time the
Mm-hmm.
recommendation is based on someone wanting to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
If you're extremely overweight, you have extremely high BMI. We'll use medical terms here or official terms. The best recipe for your weight loss might not be a jog
Mm-hmm.
because you have not developed the tissues that are going to be hitting the ground at a high intensity when you go for that jog. The
Well,
best one might be a walk.
there's also something, I think there's something in people's minds that think, well, if you go slow, then it's low impact, so it's safe. And I cannot tell you how many people that I have encountered individually, specifically me, not even counting secondhand, that think that you just run through the pain. Oh,
This is
I
this
have,
is not a medical recommendation,
yeah, I
but
my feet
if
hurt. I have shin splints. My knees hurt. I just have to run through the pain. No.
well, this is not a medical recommendation. So if you do this, you're doing it at your own risk. But stand on your toes or on the balls of your feet and then drop onto your heel. Feel how much that kind of hurts and the shock that goes up your body. Definitely don't do it if you've already been diagnosed with a disc issue in your back.
Mm-hmm.
But do that. That's only 1.5 times your body weight. So the average from toes to drop on heel, the acceleration due to gravity, you're hitting the ground at about 1.5 times your body weight. A light, slow jog is minimum 2 times body weight, and you're hitting the ground with one foot instead of both. So do that little drill, feel the shock that goes up your body, and now half again more of it, or I guess a third again more of it, 1.5 to 2, and that's the minimum you're going to get. But then double that because it's on one leg. So that's the amount of pressure, and it makes you actually marvel at the strength of an
Hmm.
ankle and
Hmm.
of the Achilles tendon itself. Because that, even though it's a robust structure, that's carrying, if you're sprinting, 8 times your body weight every time it hits. So that's pretty impressive. Okay, so but then let's jump back up to this one because this is where I think the trend towards more Achilles tears is coming in. Tight calf muscles. As I said earlier, the tendon itself really doesn't stretch, but the calf muscle does. This is related to the flat arches. So if you have flat arches, get an orthotic because you can't really exercise that. But if you have tight calf muscles, you can do something about that.
Hmm.
And so that rigid tissue of the tendon has a little spring to it, but it's so little that you can't even almost register it unless you have special equipment. But the calf muscle itself is the safety valve for that tissue. Because what's going to happen is if you get into danger zone with the tissue, your nervous system reacts within hundredths of a second to relax your calf muscle so it will stretch out and protect that tissue. But if it can only stretch so far before the checks and balances of the calf saying, don't stretch me anymore, then they're going to fight each other. It's going to be too tight. Boom, rupture. Right? So there's signals going back and forth. The tendon has its own receptors or sensors, I should say, sensors, and the calf muscle has its sensors. And if the calf muscle sensors don't alarm to be rigid enough, then the tendon will be saved because the tendon's going to say, we need help, and the calf will stretch out. Now, yeah, it takes a little bit away from performance, but I'd rather stay on the field, right?
Hmm.
What happened there is the tendon in Greenlaw right there, the tendon shot a signal to the brain, probably on those jumps that said, quit doing this. And then the calf sent a signal back on one of those jumps or the step itself that said, I can't stretch anymore. Don't stretch me anymore. And it would contract the calf. So you've got a lot of forces being applied. How strong is his calf? Well, you saw how high he can jump
Yeah.
when he was hyped up. So that calf is contracting against the force that's already on the Achilles itself. And so everybody says, well, there was no contact, there was no weight, or da da da. Yeah, because there was opposing forces. There was gravity itself stretching that tendon out, and then there was the calf itself saying reacting to the fact that it had met its maximum stretch.
For the normal person, because I know we're using a high level athlete as an example here, but for the normal person, you need to be cognizant of these facts as well, because when I worked at a box gym, almost all of my clients were desk jockeys, and one of the primary things I had to work on was hip flexor tightness because you're sitting down all the time, and so these muscles right in front of your hips are going to tighten up because they're like that all the time. I had two clients that were the exact opposite: a surgical nurse and a pharmacist, because they were on their feet all day long. You know, 8 to 12 hours a day on their feet, and you tend to kind of slouch back a little bit to try and find a rest position. And so those posterior chain muscles, those are what are tightening up all the time. And so in order to safely do the things I wanted to do with them, rather than doing all the hip mobility stuff that I did with everybody else, I had to work on uh, uh, hamstring and calf flexibility and ankle movement to
Mhm.
make sure those ankles could move in a safe range of motion.
And this is Mayo Clinic, so this is exactly what we're talking about: strength and strengthen the calves. So stretch and strengthen the calves. So the worst thing you can have is a tight, weak muscle. A tight, weak muscle. Second worst thing is a loose, weak muscle. So, but I guarantee you, Dre Greenlaw's calves were not weak. So we
Yup.
had a tight, strong muscle.
Yup.
And in this situation, it worked against him because that strong muscle is pulling up while gravity's pulling down on that same tendon and pop. But had he had some spring to his calves, his nervous system would have basically shut off the strength that's pulling from the calf from the top. Now, why are we seeing this trend is the question, and this is really where I want to go with this, is because what I've seen in high school, mostly high school, because I deal with a lot of high school athletes, college and above, this trend has been building to where it's kind of the norm in weight rooms right now, is my guys can't squat deep, so let's elevate their heels because now you can squat deeper. And look at the
Mhm.
title of this video, How to Squat Better. Increase depth, more mobility, and use your legs. Now, the common thing used to be, well, you can't squat deep because of your hips. Well, then some people figured out, oh, if we just elevate your heels, everybody can squat deep.
Mhm.
All right, so let's watch him here. Yeah, he get his hip. There's nothing wrong with his hips. Look, he just elevated his heels. He can go down. We're going to watch him squat without the elevation here in a second. All right. So, whoops. Don't give me an ad. Come on. By the way, that's AI. He doesn't really support this product. There we go.
That's an AI generated Dr. Drew. That's creepy.
Yeah, the same ones like have Joe Rogan talking about or Andrew Huberman talking about the Jawzrsizer or whatever. They never endorse those products. In fact, I think there's some lawsuits out there. Okay, so let's skip ahead to where he's trying to squat regularly. Okay. Okay. Here we
Oh,
go.
yikes.
Yeah, his squat kind of sucks. I don't know how this guy has 46,000 subscribers. Let's get the front view. Oh, there he goes with his butt wink.
Well, and look at the thoracic too. The
Yeah,
thoracic's curling over.
but the problem is not his hips. Okay, look at how this is. Remember how I get on you about your toes?
Mhm, mhm.
This guy can barely get parallel with his toes out. Why has this guy got 46,000 subscribers? He's got good production value for his videos. Maybe that's it. All right, go show us the side view.
Oh, this is painful to watch.
Yeah, but we just saw him squat really deep. It's not his hips, right?
Mhm.
Where's the one with the side? Here we go. This is the side view. Okay, so now he's saying, here we go. Come on, that's not even parallel. Come on, buddy. All right, so let's pause him and let's go to the still shots I took of him.
Oh boy.
So I have to stop this and go to Microsoft Paint. All right, so here's him on the elevation. So that's tibial line, and that's the midline of his foot. Okay, we're barely breaking 90 degrees there.
Mhm.
Yeah. His knees are way over his toes. Remember the old days when you're not supposed to put your knees over your toes? Yeah. That okay, so I'm glad that that myth was dispelled by this trend. Knees over toes guy, all of these people that are out there, they're misunderstanding his work because he's actually doing this to stretch the tissues of the knees out more and get the capsule, you squeeze blood out. All the he's go to knees over toes guy or freak athletic. He'll give you all the little details on why that's okay. The problem is he is it's something you should be doing sometimes, but you should also be not neglecting other things.
Mhm.
So surface level, oh look, my athletes can squat
Let
deeper.
me give you a specific example. Way back when, there was a time where you had me doing squats like this because I had come off of a knee surgery. So, in order to be able to squat and protect my knees, I was squatting like this. But then, in addition to that, I was doing all of this corrective work in order to work my way back towards being able to squat properly.
And I'm gonna go into the follow up to that, but let's just go through the what's going on here. So yes, they can squat deeper. They're gonna get better quad development. Those glutes are working harder. Yeah, we're working the hips a little better, but we're doing it with a crutch. We're doing it with a crutch of elevating the heels, so there's almost no dorsiflexion there. Barely breaking 90. And remember what we talked about? Tight structure, and I'm got my cursor over it right here. We're doing nothing to work
Mhm.
the gastrocnemius or the soleus through a full range of motion. Let's go to picture 2. Tell me if it switches without me having to go to a different share. Did it switch?
Nope.
Okay, so we gotta handle the Zoom way, I guess. Here we go. All right. So now we're switched to his regular squat. Now you see, I didn't go in line with his toe because remember, his toes were pointed way out.
Mm-hmm.
So I used the midline of his heel and then did a 90 there. He's actually getting more dorsiflexion with his shallow ass squat here than he was with his deep squat with the heels on the plates. So there's actually more stretch and more work going on here, even though he's not even squatting deep. So less quad development, less glute and hamstring development, but he's actually getting more dorsiflexion. Now imagine if he could actually, like a real squatter, squat deep from this position. He would be getting a good full range of motion and be strong in dorsiflexion as well as his glutes, quads, and hamstrings. So these coaches get these high school athletes who are in growth spurts that can't squat deep because their femurs are growing at a rapid rate, their tibias are growing at a rapid rate, their hips are tight because the muscles actually adapt later than the bones do because the bones grow so fast.
And
And they
because they
say,
spend 6 to 8 hours sitting in a desk.
mm-hmm. And then the trend is now everybody's elevating their heels. The local strength coach at the high school here has everybody doing uh, elevated heel squats with their toes out, like this guy was doing, because now they can squat and touch their butt to a med ball and come back up. But the problem is they're getting really strong with one structure in their body having a super limited range of motion. And what was the problem with Greenlaw? A strong, tight muscle over the structure that got torn. So you are adding power and strength to dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
which strength training 101 is never add power and strength to dysfunction. I'm going to let you chime in on that before I get to the solution. And actually, we
Well,
have a little extra time than I thought I did because I just got a text to delay the
well, this connects back to a couple of things we've said a long time ago, where one, as an example of, I think I brought this up as an example of where you've changed your mind based on thinking it through and the science of once upon a time, you thought, a lot of people thought there's no reason to go below 90 degrees on a bench press because that's all you're engaging the pec major in. And then you thought, well, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on there than just the pec major. So barbell to nipples, because you want to engage all that connective tissue and all that other stuff to make it stronger, even if that means you have to put on less weight. Or
Mhm.
your solution for building up to that is that's a good place where chains come into effect,
Yeah,
because
for those
then
that haven't worked with chains or bands, the tension is lower at the bottom of the most
mhm,
stretch of the movement. Now they work for pressing exercises, they don't work as well for pulling exercises
mhm.
because you're stronger at the other end on a pulling exercise.
Yeah, but
But
they look really cool when you're doing deadlifts, and that's what matters on Instagram. Um,
well, no,
but
there's a reason to use them for pulling
mhm,
exercises. It's just not the same as what we're talking about.
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, and then another spot that we've talked about is uh, and I can't remember if he changed his mind on this or not, but you brought up Eric Cressy as someone that we have referenced a lot, who does a lot of very high quality work, including published work. But he was of the opinion, at least at one time, of you should never do dips, especially for baseball players.
Hmm.
And your
And then he went
point,
on to describe an incorrectly done dip. Yeah, yeah.
yes, of well, here is the danger for dips for people who are doing this a lot. Well, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be better if we could get them to where they could do them correctly and safely? Because there's a lot of stuff that you need for doing this that gets worked in a dip. Same thing here. Wait a minute. Instead of just raise your heels and keep on squatting and go deeper and deeper, why aren't we working towards a proper squat in the first place?
Hmm. And let's go to a nicer way of doing this. So you add a crutch and you just build the strength around that dysfunction.
Mhm.
But we could also, sorry for bringing this guy back in as I share, but we can go to the next one. We can start working on this. So maybe my athlete can't squat deep, and it's not his hips, it's his ankles.
Mhm.
So this one is a kneeling version. So he is actually working more on the soleus than he is, because remember, the gastroc goes over the knee as well. So if the knee is bent, it's shortened. So if you bend the knee and then you push forward, you're stretching more the one that can't shorten by bending the knee. So he's working on the soleus here. And then we go to the next one from a standing position. Now we're including that gastroc. So they're both important. Do both
And the,
in
the
your
the
training.
key to those is make sure that that front foot is flat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you cannot touch your knee to the wall without your foot coming up, then scoot closer.
Mm-hmm. And
Scoot as
start
close as you
start with
have
your
to.
yeah, with your toe touching the wall and
Yeah.
push forward. If you can't do it there, we know you've got a freaking bad problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? That the gold standard is put your fist and your thumb in the position like that between your toe and the wall. And if you can hit that, that's probably going to be good enough for you to stay healthy. And that allows for body size, because someone with the longer legs and a bigger body is probably going to have bigger hands. So you can kind of use that as a gold standard. But my thing is, if you're not putting load on it, go ahead and push it as far as it'll go. Get that as far as it'll go. Now, if you're hypermobile, that's another problem. But when we're talking about the athletes that's like this, in this situation, I guarantee you he was not hypermobile. But the yeah, start with these gentle stretches and do your squats to the depth that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then as your ankle gets more flexible, then you push the squat deeper. That's why I'm big on the GP phase, general prep phase, because the weight is lighter, the reps are higher. Athletes hate it, but it's what they need, because you have a lighter weight to push a greater range of motion than you're comfortable with without destroying your back or anything in the process. And so now you can actually develop those tissues through a range of motion. It's not just being strong. It's being strong in every position you can end up in. You talked about McCaffrey getting rolled up on, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was in a very awkward position, but he didn't get injured because he's strong in every position. And if you're a linebacker and you don't think you're going to go down all the way to your butt with your foot still planted sometimes, then you're just dumb. I'm sorry. But but it's the strength coach job to make sure
Mm-hmm.
they do the right thing. And so you do this while you squat to your capacity. And as you get more flexible, you squat to a greater capacity. Whether that's in your hips, could be your tensor fascia, could be, but I guarantee you with this bloke right here, who I still don't know. It's so popular. These videos are popping up everywhere. That's just the first one that came up. But for you,
I was wondering what was going on before you mentioned that this was a new fad in real time, because that you brought this up. When it happened is this fad of heels up, and I had been seeing this for a while now at the gym, going, what, why is it, why am I seeing more and more and more and more people doing this as their base squat?
well, it's not just that it's a fad. It's a fad now, or it was a fad then, but now it's the norm.
Yeah.
That's where it became problematic, because now it's in every weight room across the country, except for the very few that probably have the same mindset that I do. Yeah, I want you to get over the knees over toes is always bad. Go back to my squat video. What is my perfect squat? Do you remember from the video? How do I describe your perfect squat for you?
Oh, I don't remember exactly how you phrase it, but the point where you can get down as low as you can and then get back up again without
There's a specific thing you
compensation.
missed in there.
What?
The lowest you can get with whole foot pressure on the ground,
There it is.
because
Okay.
it's not about squatting on the heels, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
letting yourself drive on the toes. It's the pressure is going down the midline of your foot. Wherever your knees and your hips end up with that pressure is going to be the best squat for you. If you have longer tibias, your knees are going to shoot out over your toes a little bit. If you've got longer femurs, you're probably going to sit back a little more. Did I get that backwards? I might have got that backwards. Uh, but the if you go back to the heels, you're going to lean forward more. If you go over the toes too much, you're going to drive up onto the toes, which is too much pressure on the knees. And so if you can keep equal pressure on your foot where it's equal from ball of your foot to your heel, and you can get all the way down, that's your perfect squat. Other things to look out for, like butt wink or everything.
Mm-hmm.
But just like this guy, notice his butt wink went away when he elevated his heels. Your butt wink will partially go away unless you just have a super tight tensor fascia. Your butt wink will partially go away if you get good dorsiflexion. And so work on the dorsiflexion, squat to your capacity. Now, here's where I'm going to go against that a little bit. Is there a time and place? Yes, there's always a time and place. I never say no to anything as far as exercises go. It's, is this useful and is the risk reward ratio worth it? I'm a bodybuilder and my quads are my weakness. Elevate those heels, wreck those quads in those elevated squats, because that's what you're going to do. And you're going to get a nice little teardrop. You're going to get the development in all four at the same time. You're going to have shredded quads doing those squats. Just do your stretches in conjunction. End your day with foam rolling the back of the calf and stretch. Great, awesome. You're less likely to rupture your Achilles, and you're going to get amazing quads. I've got Greenlaw in my weight room. We're going to, for his off season, we're going to do his GP, get him through the season, kind of get him repaired a little bit from the season, ice baths and, high rep weights, some rotator cuff, some low back work, some hip work. Then after that, we're going to go into a muscle building phase. You know what? I might, for his working sets on his squats, let him elevate his heels because he's going to build a lot of muscle real fast. But then we're going to do it in conjunction with his wall ankle stretches. And then when we get to strength and power, we're going to take those heels up again. We're down again. And we're going to make him go through a full range of motion and explode from those full ranges of motion. And then do that in conjunction with his wall drills on the sprint mechanics and working that tissue in dorsiflexion versus just with the heels up all the time. And so that's yeah, there is a time and place even with that athlete. But what phase of training am I in? Am I just worried about building bigger muscles? That's about 4 weeks of his training right there. 4 to 6 weeks of his training right there. Go ahead, elevate. But don't ignore the ankle in the process. In fact, this might be a time where you finish that work with extreme calf work, where he's going to get up on a box and go to as full a dorsiflexion as he can with weight in his hands, and then pop up under the toes. And then go down slowly into that full dorsiflexion and then pop up on the toes. And he's going to have amazing calves. He's going to have amazing quads, and his calves won't be super tight that they're pulling against that Achilles tendon. So yeah, there's a time and place. I can see how I would use it with my athletes, definitely with bodybuilders. But the problem is that's below the surface level thinking. And all of these high school strength coaches, which I'm sorry, most of them are trash. Otherwise, they'd be a college strength coach. But most college strength coaches are trash too. They're just saying my guys are squatting deeper and I'm getting better performance numbers quickly.
Sure, because you're going to be able to push a sled a lot better when you crank up the mass on those quads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you get out there and you start hitting that sled, and you're going to look like, you're making huge strides, but at what cost? So, for instance, years back, when Des Bryant blew his Achilles, and in his rehab, one of the things I heard him say in an interview with someone was that he was surprised how stiff his feet were, and that his rehab guy had him doing a lot of barefoot work
Mm-hmm.
in order to get the foot,
Well,
that plantar fashion
yeah,
flexing and moving and strengthening.
you brought up an interesting detail. A lot of if someone wears lifting shoes, they're doing the elevation already.
Mm-hmm.
Lifting shoes already elevate your heel and then
Mm-hmm.
they taper down.
And so my thought when he said that, and what I was kind of annoyed that I never heard anyone follow up with or point out, is that, don't you think maybe then that should have been part of your program all along?
Yeah.
and anyone else who might be worried about popping an Achilles. And I said when this happened, when you pointed out that this has been a fad and now become the norm, is it felt like an Achilles was a very rare
Mm-hmm.
injury. And the last year or two, I've been hearing this or that person ruptured their Achilles, a pro athlete more and more and more. It's I had
Well,
noticed it more, but I
you
hadn't
you
realized
see these
why.
trends in sports because here's an example from baseball. Rotator cuffs were a huge issue for a long time, and they're still an issue, but it's you saw it kind of level off and then kind of decrease a little bit. But what did you see go up in the process? Tommy Johns, because rotation of that shoulder is important for taking pressure off the elbow because the elbow only should go like this. Not, I can't even bend my elbow that way because it's not supposed to go that way. So if you have lack of rotation in your shoulder, then you're going to have more pressure on this way on the UCL because the elbow is going to flex back and kind of pull that ligament apart to make up for that. So we strengthened the rotator cuff in a way that limited its mobility in the because even your best pitcher, if he just goes back like this, again, let me move the right way. If he just goes back like this, he's only going to get so far, a lot further than I can. But look at his actual pitch and see where his hand gets. Well, if the muscle's stronger, that's great. It protects the shoulder, but it's also strong enough to prevent the shoulder from getting to that position. So something's got to give, and that's the UCL, which ultimately gets stretched and stretched and stretched and stretched till you have Tommy Johns. So you saw that in baseball. Well, in football, what they've seen is, oh my gosh, we've reduced knee injuries because it turns out the old never squat over your toes was wrong. We actually need to take the knee through a big, giant range of motion. How do we do that? We elevate the heels. Well, you just took another structure and took it out of its range of motion in the process. So it's robbing from Peter to save Paul. There, people get so focused. Reduce knee injury, but we forgot about the ankle. And I say you can do it all if you just look at get your get your blinders off and look at the entire human being and then take that human being through the most range of motion they can have with strength. And you're going to have the best version of that human being, and that's going to be your best athlete.
I am trying to find a good picture of Max Scherzer because Max Scherzer is a freak. When you look at his, okay, here we go. Here's a picture from him when he was with Detroit. Uh, and then I will explain why I'm pulling this up here in just a second. Because Max Scherzer is a longtime client of Eric Cressy's. All right. And Cressy posts pictures of him all the time as an example when he's talking about stuff. And to your point about the elbow, all right,
Yeah.
look at that external rotation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's freakish. That hurts me just to look at. Okay. And I think he's 40 now. We're pushing 40. And so he's been pitching a long time. And with that arm angle in mind, here is his injury history: nose, back, rhomboid, trap neck, hamstring, groin, triceps, hamstring, oblique, side, neck, triceps. Notice what wasn't there.
Shoulder.
No shoulder, no elbow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just some triceps was there a couple of times. But
Which I
not
actually
any
see a lot with
biggies.
my youth athlete is
Mhm,
that tricep tendon sits in a groove right there. So the UCL would be here, but the tricep tendon is in this groove.
mhm.
And a lot of times, I think that my theory is, or my hypothesis is that that pops out of its groove and then pops back in, which is going to get a fraying effect
Hmm.
going in and out, similar to what we see with the bicep tendon a lot. And so I think that's what's happening. So I really do a lot of tendonitis work, even
So
in preventative ways with my guys.
so Max Scherzer is when I especially these youth baseball players and their dads, if someone asks me for recommendations of who to follow, who to read, and I will use Scherzer as an example and say, look at this, and that's why you should follow this guy because look at how Cressy is able to balance strength and mobility
Hmm.
so that Scherzer can do that for 20 years and he doesn't have the major arm injuries that you would expect that everybody else has.
Yeah. So my thing is look at the entire human being. So that's step one. That should be everybody's step one if you're dealing with somebody's health. I don't care if it's physical
Yeah.
or mental health. Look at the entire human being. Take look at the kinetic chain that is going to be involved in whatever their sport is. So some are more all over the place, like MMA would be a good example where the answer is yes. Where's the trajectory of the kinetic chain? Yes. Uh, but something like baseball, well, you can follow it from the plant foot all the way up to the release of the ball, right? So you can look at that whole thing. With Greenlaw, well, he's a sprinter, so that's what football is, a bunch of 10-yard sprints for the most part. So look at that ball of foot contact all the way up through the contact he's going to make with his shoulder pads if he's doing it right, right? So so take the individual as a whole, look at the kinetic chain of the activity, and then account everything in that kinetic chain, not just the thing that's the fad of the time or the injury fad of the time.
Mm-hmm.
ACLs, PC or ACLs, MCLs, meniscus. Yeah, that was an epidemic in football for a while. But you don't sacrifice something else to correct that problem. You look at how you can correct that problem without affecting things above and below it. And I think that's where we went wrong. People said, "Oh, we're gonna less ACL injuries," and I heard that from strength coaches in the school next to me. It was, we're focusing on reducing ACL injuries. Well, first of all, they didn't do that, but second of all, they did it. They were doing it at the expense of other things.
Translating to the normal person, we haven't bitched about CrossFit in a while. This was to me always the failing of CrossFit is it took the idea of intensity and it made that the be all and end all is here's your workout for the day. Go, 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 go. Wait a minute. Okay. That person may
Let's
be
use
able to
terms
do
correctly.
this.
I'm a stickler for terms.
Okay.
Intensity is closeness to one rep max. They took the idea of hard and miserable and made it the
Okay.
cornerstone.
Yes. Yes. The idea of uh getting that heart rate elevated, keeping it elevated, pushing muscles to failure. Okay. And and that was the everything. And it's well, wait a minute. What about, you know, this guy here who's way out of shape? You're giving him the same workout and yelling at him the same you are with this guy who's got 8% body fat and is, you know, getting ready for his first CrossFit games. So that these two things don't work together, right? So it's if you are if you're just the normal person trying to get in shape, consider the whole body. So, all right, I had this one guy who was way overweight, but he used to be an athlete. You know, he was a big time athlete uh, in high school. He played a little bit of college baseball, couldn't make it to the next level, and now he was technically obese. Using the technical term, he was obese, but he wanted to do what he used to be able to do. And one of those things was when he was young and in shape, he would do a lot of road work. and I could not figure out how to get him to stop. I would work with him the best I could to mitigate what he was doing to himself, but stop running on the treadmill. You're literally hurting yourself.
Hmm.
Okay? So what is it you are trying to do? All right? And if what you want to do is that going to conflict? All right. And if you still really want to do that, for instance, around here, I've got a lot of 30 and 40 something, Indian desk jockeys who then want to go out and play cricket in their free time. All right. What are the stresses that's putting on your body? How are you going to mitigate that? How are you going to deal with that, especially considering you're a 30 or 40 something desk jockey? Okay. These are things you need to consider. Don't just look at a fad on Instagram and say, oh, I want to do that because that person's doing that. I want to look like that, or that looks fun. You need to think through what are the trade offs. And if you're just the general, I think, I don't know if you got this from somewhere, but I've stolen this a lot is um what is the number one fitness goal for most people most of the time? I want to look better naked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to have to take a whole body approach there, because if that's just your general goal, you need to take a whole body approach and you need to think through what are, where are my weaknesses, where are my strengths, and what are the trade-offs I'm going to have to make to get where I want to be.
Which is funny because I might have to adjust that because working with a lot of women over the course of the year, you actually realize they say that kind of stuff, but they really actually want to look better in clothes because a skinny girl actually doesn't look good naked, but they look great in clothes. Where a fit girl looks amazing naked, but they may look a little clunky in if they don't know how to pick their wardrobe around their athletic body, right?
Mhm.
So they say that, but it's really more I want to look good in clothes, which means for women it means they want to look good for other women. Us guys are just
And we got canceled. We're not supposed to say that out loud.
well, because they deep down inside, no matter what they say out loud, or no matter what they actually try to convince their own minds of, they know they have the advantage because we're like, 6 is good enough.
As Ron White said, you've seen one pair of breasts, then you pretty
Pretty
much want
much
to
want to
see,
see them
see it
all.
all.
Could be the 80-year-old lady at the biker rally. I'm gonna
All
see
right,
my
roll them
tits.
up.
Yep,
He's not wrong.
he's not wrong.
All right. Well, that about does it for that subject. Are we going to do a part two, or do we have time to get into
How long do you think you
the next
need?
bit? At least
I
30
have till
minutes.
1.
Oh, you have till one?
Yeah.
All right, let's pause for a second and then we'll dive into it.
All right, so we're finishing this segment. The other one's going to be in a separate video, but I do need to give disclaimers here because we talked about health information. And just so you know, I am not your trainer. I just play one on YouTube here. I do it in real life, but I'm not yours. I do not know you. I do not know your body. I have not watched you. I have not put hands on you in the professional way, and none of those things. So anything is for recreational, educational purposes only. If you do it on your own, you're at your own risk. If you are uncomfortable, go find a professional that can help you. If you're in my area, look me up. You know my name, easy to find. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
See y'all next time.